Well, a very, very warm welcome. Hi, my name is Cassim, and welcome to another episode of Journal Entries. We are now on episode number 5, and in today's episode, I want to talk to you about three things. I want to talk to you firstly about the man who cannot read is in the same position as a man who can read but doesn't. I want to talk to you about the importance of still believing in humanity and really the fact that our generation, those of us in our 20s and 30s at the moment, are the next generation. And to finally finish off, I want to talk to you about the importance of kind of having a purpose, having a drive, having some kind of destiny, having a center for which you can lead your life from. I firstly want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that you're probably busy and there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, and you have your busy life and you have lots of things going on. So I really appreciate you taking this half an hour to join me, or however long you've got to actually listen to me and share some of my philosophies and share some of my ideas with you. And I hope that something that I share with you today can in some way inspire you or can help you take those next steps in your life to becoming a higher flow expression of yourself. And on that, you may be wondering, Cassim, why did you start this series? Why do you do these journal entries? Um, about I think it was about 5 years ago, I decided to study successful people. I decided to study how to become successful, and how to become successful without ending up divorced, without ending up killing yourself, without ending up stepping on loads of people to get there. And I was trying to figure out, are there some people who've essentially managed to achieve those two things? So they're basically successful, however it is that they define success, but they're actually good people at the same time. And one of the things that I had to go on to the path of doing was I had to, of course, define success for myself. I had to say, okay, well, Cassim, if you're studying all these people, what does success mean to you? And one of the things that I decided success was to me is that I made the decision that in order to be a success in life, you had to have a successor. In other words, for you to say, get to the end of your life and say, Cassim, you've done well, you've led a good life, you've achieved stuff, you've seen the world, you've connected with people. In order for me to live that kind of life where I can get to the end of my life and say, I'm done, I've finished, there's no more that I could have done, guys. I decided that you had to find somebody in your life who you can pass what you've learned onto. Because if you don't, then I didn't see how you could possibly consider yourself to be a success. And the reason why I believe that is that if everything that you've learned and everything that you've experienced dies with you, then you're a failure. Because then the next generation is going to have to start all over again. Your cousins, your godchildren, everybody who is coming behind you has to start basically from the bottom all over again, and trying to figure everything out. When in reality have refined philosophies in your lifetime, you've learned lessons, you've made mistakes, you've met people, you've connected with people, you've had great memories, you have got great stories. And I believe that the essence of life is succession, is to pass whatever you've learned on to the next generation. And so that's why I started this series. I wanted to start this series called Journal Entries to inspire you to start your own journal entries, primarily because I realize that most people who are listening to me, the reality is you're not exactly rich. You haven't got millions of pounds to which you can give your next generation or your brothers and sisters or your cousins or godchildren, to give them an inheritance where you can give them like 100 million pounds as an inheritance. Most people just haven't got that. Most people are not in positions of power, i.e., a politician or a CEO of a company, where they can use their position to be able to position people so that people can get ahead, right? And most of us don't have fame or have achieved huge success in our lives that we can be able to influence other people. But what most of us do have is we have what we know, we have what we've experienced, and we have what we believe, and that is in essence is life itself. And what I want to encourage you to do and inspire you, hopefully, to do today is to set your own journal entries. Start writing down what you believe, what you stand for, what you've learned, mistakes you've made. How would you go about making money if you were 25 and you wanted to give your 25-year-old self advice? If you just left school and you wanted to give yourself some advice on life, on women, on health and vitality, on mental health, what advice would you give? And I say this to you because I encourage you to write this stuff down and give it to your children when they get married or when they get to 18 as a present. Give all your journals over the next 15, 20 years to your children and give it to them as a gift. That to them will be more of a blessing than giving them millions of pounds. That's what I believe, and that's why I wanted to start this journal entries. So, let's get into what I want to talk to you about today. And as I said at the beginning, there's three things that I want to talk to you about. And let's go into the first thing that I want to talk to you about. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about that I was journaling about and I've been really thinking about recently is that I wrote down that a man who cannot read is in the same position as a man who can read but doesn't. So I do a workshop on Sundays, a goal setting workshop. And in a couple of weeks ago, in that workshop, I shared with my audience and people who watch that Sunday that I work in Tesco's part time, and every single day, when I leave Tesco's, I see a homeless man, and the homeless man is usually sat outside of Tesco's, and every single day, I always wondered, and I've been wondering to this day, even to this morning, I wondered to myself, that man is sat outside of Tesco's. He clearly doesn't look like he is ill or chronically ill. He seems pretty intelligent because sometimes when I've gone past him, he seems to have a book, but yet he's in this position. My question was, we live in England, and in England, I believe that anyone can make anything of themselves. You know, I share with leaders particularly that there is this thing about the American dream and there's this thing about how America is a place to be. But I actually disagree with that statement. I've traveled all over the world and I can tell you, in my opinion, that the best country to actually live and thrive and have the best opportunities at having a remarkable life is the UK. There is no better place in the world. It's no surprise that so many people, we have a problem in the UK with immigration. You don't hear people fighting to get into Poland or try to get into Russia. Why? Because those places have loads of systematic problems. They have loads of regimes. Like, for example, you go into France and you can't even wear, if you're Muslim, you can't even wear a veil. So a lot of countries around the world, they have corruption and there's just so many things that stop you from succeeding that honestly, when you begin to travel the world and experience some of the world, and you come back to England and the UK, you very quickly realize, my God, the English dream, the UK really is the best place for me to thrive and for me to make anything that I can of myself, which you can, right? All of you listening to me, you know that you can make anything of yourself if you live in the UK. You know it. You can go to uni, you can do Open University, you can go back to college, you can go on YouTube, you can go get Wi-Fi. Essentially, anything that you want to make of yourself, you can do it, right? It may take you 10, 20, 15 years to do it, but if you really want it, you can make it. And so my question was always, why is this man sat here? What's going on? I mean, surely he lives in the UK and he's sat outside of Tesco's. He must know that he could go into Tesco's at any time and ask for a job, that he could ask people for advice. I mean, every day, how many people go into Tesco's? Maybe, I don't know, 2,000. Has he ever thought to ask those people, put a sign up and say, I'm looking for life advice, I'm looking for money advice, I'm looking for advice on how to get out of poverty, out of homelessness. Can you share with me some advice? And what I came to realize, and it's something that I think is really, really, really important, is that so many of us in life, we have the ability to improve our lives, but we are so driven by fear that, and this illusion of looking perfect, and this illusion of never being seen to be starting small, that we never actually end up becoming who we're capable of becoming. Many of you who are listening to me, you know that really you're an oak tree trapped inside of an acorn. You know that you're an eagle trapped inside of an eaglet. You know that you're powerful. You know that you're strong. You know that things are available to you. And I wonder whether you are spending so much time on the outside of your life looking perfect and perfecting everything on the outside and getting everybody to believe that you're successful by having the nicest car, by living in the nicest neighborhood, by dressing the nicest, by having the latest haircuts. All everything on the outside looks wonderful and it looks great and you look perfect and you look like you have it together, but in reality there is a cancer going on inside of you. You're not following your dreams, you're not following your passions, you don't really like the job that you're doing, the relationship that you're on doesn't really fulfill you, you have a lot of trauma that you haven't dealt with, and there is a hurricane going on inside of you, but on the outside it looks wonderful, it looks perfect. And what I would share with you, and is really something that I've had to apply in my life, is I ask you to stop trying to look perfect. Stop trying to get everybody to believe that you're successful. Stop trying to do all of these things on the outside and go and ask for help. Go out there and ask for advice. Go out there and find people who already have what you want and start emulating them. Start modeling them. Start asking them for advice. Start following in their footsteps. I said to a friend of mine recently that, being negative and not having any dreams takes no courage, right? It's easy to be negative. Anyone can be negative. But the real test of character of a man, the real test of manhood for a man, is to rise above where he started, to rise above his circumstances. I remember something that Jim Rohn once said. Jim Rohn said that to have more, you simply have to become more. For things to change for you, you will have to change. And I share that piece of advice with you guys. Look, the reality is, if you live in England and you have the ability to read, you have the ability to make your dreams become a reality, you have the ability to become whoever you wish to become, but you don't, you're basically in the same position or even worse than the people in Africa. Because the people in Africa actually dare to be stupid. They actually dare to dream. It's just that they don't have the strategies, they don't have the tactics, they don't have the resources that are available in the UK that you do, right? People in Africa have drive. People in Africa have a why. People in Africa want to do good for other people. It's just they just don't know how to. I say to many of my friends, because they're like, well, Cassim, why are so many people poor in Africa and in India and in Nepal? And I say to people all the time, the problem isn't that people are dumb in Africa. The problem is they're so conditioned to believe and think in a certain way. They're so trapped into a system of survival that even if you went to Africa and gave somebody, let's say, £10,000, do you know what they would do with the money? They will take the money and go and spend it instead of strategically thinking in terms of, okay, let me take a part of this and let me buy land, let me invest in some crops and buy some vegetables or buy some products which I can grow. This in turn will allow me to be able to employ people. Employment of people will then in turn create jobs. And all of a sudden we have this ecosystem and these systems where now people can start to rise out of poverty. As we begin to become successful, we inspire the next generation to become successful. We can then set up a charity where we can help young people who want to all of a sudden, or a foundation where we can help young people who want to rise from the bottom, rise to get educated, to go out there and become doctors, or to go out there and pursue their dreams, where they can come and become educated. Do you see the cycle that I'm talking about? And so I would really ask you to really think whether you are really employing the access and the resources at your disposal, considering the fact that you live in the UK. Do you realize that if you're in Africa, the chances of you actually going after your dreams are basically impossible? It isn't that that you don't have, just because you're poor or that you live in an economically deprived country, it doesn't mean that you don't have talent. There are lots of people in Africa and India and Nepal that are very talented, that are gifted, but they just simply they don't have the level of thinking that people in the UK have. They don't have the resources. They don't have the ability to be able to explore different avenues. They just don't, because they spend most of their life trying to survive. And I wonder whether you may be economically and socially and politically rich, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually, you're actually barren. You're actually empty. And so, what I would encourage you to do is start filling yourself up, start really fueling yourself, start looking at your dreams, start looking at what the kind of life that you'd like to have, start looking at the kind of life you want your kids to have, you want your nephews to have, you want the next generation to have. That's what I would encourage you, and I was thinking about, and that's what I personally want to apply in my life. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. So the other thing that I was thinking about deeply this week is to ask myself if I still believed in humanity. And I guess I ask you the same question. Do you still believe in humanity? Do you still believe in the impossible? Let me tell you where this came from. Over the last 6 months, I've really been making a concerted effort to speak to men about their dreams, about their goals, about where it is that they want the next generation to be, the kind of life that they want the next generation to have. And I've been because obviously we live in a world today of social media, of Instagram. The world today is a complex world. In fact, I share with leaders that Peter Drucker once said that we live in the era of the three C's, which is accelerated change, overwhelming complexity, and tremendous competition. Right? The world is a very complicated world. And because of that, the world is very difficult to navigate. And so I'm always curious, what kind of world, if we're living in a difficult world where it's hard for us to get a deposit to buy a house today, my question is, how much more difficult is it going to be for our brothers and sisters, for our children, for our grandchildren? And it's really important that we think about this, because many of you who are in your 20s and 30s, you don't realize that we are the next generation. I think I've started to find, not that I've started to find, but it's become more and more apparent to me that my generation, people who were basically born after kind of 1989, we're still under this illusion that we are not the next generation, but we are the next generation. This is it. If you look at the world and you look at the next generation, our dreams and the way that we model how to be a good human being, about how to pursue our dreams, about the kind of world that we want to live in, we are, whatever it is that the next generation is going to believe is going to be based on what we believe. We know that, right? You've heard of the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know what I'm talking about. I remember there was a man who made a big impression on my life. His name was Tim Schmidt. Tim Schmidt is one of the co-founders of the Eden Project in Cornwall. I'm sure most of you know the Eden Project. If you don't know it, Google it. And I was listening and I was studying Tim Schmidt, because many of you will know I study people who've basically done the impossible, started off with nothing and have rose to huge success. And I was studying him and I was wondering, how did this man come up with the Eden Project? Because if you know anything about the Eden Project and you know anything about people who live in Cornwall, building that massive construction in Cornwall, well, you can only imagine the kind of obstacles that he obviously had to overcome. And I was listening to him talking about the next generation and about the next generation of dreamers and pioneers. And he was saying that many times he goes to seminars and he goes and gives talks and he goes to all these kind of marketing and kind of networking events. And many times people will ask him and speak to him and they'll say, well, what is it that how we're gonna save the planet? You know, that this new generation, they're destroying the planet and they drive too much and everyone flies everywhere. And he said he always gets frustrated at that question because he said what he tells people is they don't need to worry about the planet. All they need to worry about is the kind of people who they are, because the kind of people who they are is going to determine how the next generation treat the planet. Listen, guys, if every human being on this planet died, the planet will be perfectly fine. We wouldn't need to worry about the planet. Do you know what is causing all these problems with the planet? We are. So my point to you being is, if we were better as humans, if we were thinking of more creative solutions, if we were really kinder to each other, kinder to the planet, not as didn't consume as much, the planet would be perfectly fine. And my point, and this is what I basically learned from Tim Schmidt, is I think a lot of us were so focused on saying that the next generation is not good and the next generation hasn't been raised up with good morals and the next generation is obsessed with Twitter and Instagram that we're forgetting that we've modeled this. These kids have, whilst they may have been exposed to that stuff today, the work ethic, the belief system, the habits have all been a form and a paradigm and a basis for what we've modeled for them. In other words, a lot of us, we say to our kids, you shouldn't be on the internet, yet we spend most of the time on the internet. Well, you should be a good person, yet the moment someone annoys us, we get into an argument and we won't forgive them. And so what I would share with you, and this is what I'm saying, I was personally thinking about as Cassim, is that I've really got to live my life intentionally. Like, I've really got to watch everything that I do, everything that I say. I can no longer experiment with my life. Because my brothers, I have brothers and sisters, and they're all looking to me, and I'm modeling for them what it is that a good human being is. I'm modeling for them whether they should pursue their dreams or they shouldn't pursue their dreams. Whether I realize it or not, they're looking and saying to themselves, well, if Cassim is following his dreams, that must mean it's possible for somebody to follow his dreams. Many of you know that I want to speak and I want to write books and I want to inspire men to become higher, fuller expressions of themselves. Imagine if I spent all my life in a job that I didn't really like, and I would, every time I'd go home or I'd go and see my brothers and sisters, I'd be like, I can't wait for the weekend. Without me realizing it, my brothers and sisters would pick up that essentially people don't follow their dreams. I mean, what do you mean? Following your dreams is a ridiculous thing. Envisioning a future is stupid. I mean, who envisions a future? And I think part of this as well, guys, which again, going a bit further deeper into this that I was thinking about, is a lot of us men today, we really don't believe anything. We don't believe in humanity. We don't believe in the impossible. A lot of us are skeptics. We're cynical. We don't believe that the next generation could be amazing. A lot of us, we've lived in a world where I think we've been exposed to so much negativity, so much crime, so much destruction, that some of us have actually got to the point where we believe that that is the majority of the planet. I mean, there are almost 8 billion people on this planet, and some of us genuinely, if you look at the way we talk and the way we behave and the way we articulate some of our ideas and philosophies, you would come to the conclusion that most of us believe, in my opinion anyway, that the world, essentially, this is it. This is all that's ever going to happen in the world. I remember something that Will Smith said. Will Smith said, he who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't are both usually right. I wonder whether you believe that the world is going to be better in the next 20 years than it is today. I wonder whether you believe that the next generation is going to go further, do more, love deeper than we have as a generation, or whether you're a skeptic. Because here's a point, here's what I'm saying to you. There is a saying that Buddha once said. Buddha once said that good people have to wake up every day and try to empty the ocean with a spoon, with a ladle. And I think my generation, we need to start getting to a point in our life where we start thinking of emptying the ocean with a spoon, trying to put out positivity into the world. Yes, we may be one person against, okay, everybody we know, because we're the only positive one. But that one light was one candle, even in the darkness, still shines. And I wonder whether you're the kind of individual who is optimistic, who's positive about the future, who's positive about where we're going to end up, who's positive about dreams, who's positive about really articulating your ideas, about philosophy, about connecting people, about love, about the fact that people can have meaningful relationships and they can be together for years. Or whether you're the skeptic, whether you're the cynic, whether you're the pessimist, whether you're the person who reigns and is still reigning on everyone's parade. I wonder if that's you. And what does that mean for the next generation to go even further and deeper? I don't know. I'm just thinking. That's just what I was thinking about. So I've really, as I say to you, I've really, really had to model my life and lead by example. This is so difficult. I can't even explain to you. To lead by example, to lead through your life is what I have to do every day. I've decided, because of my brothers and sisters, I actually have to do whatever it is that I believe. If I believe people should follow their dreams, I've actually got to do it. If I believe you should be healthy and look after yourself, I've actually got to do it. And it is so difficult, but I've come to the realization that if I don't do it, the next generation are basically going to say, well, my dad, well, Cassim didn't follow his dreams. Well, Cassim was always a pessimist. It's just so typical. And then this cycle starts all over again. And it's like, this is ridiculous, right? That's what I was thinking about. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is something that I found to be more and more and more and more important, is around living your life based on purpose. Essentially, I've found that there are 5 big questions in life, which, when I started looking at human behavior and I looked at human beings, I started to see that everything that all of us were doing was at the center of it were 5 questions. Number 1 was the question, who am I? Saw that when people are like trying to look a certain way and have this haircut and they're trying to like look a certain way and emulate people, they were trying to basically figure out who they were. Question number 2 was, what's my story? People were always trying to figure out, what is my story? What have I been through? Am I a victim? Am I a survivor? Number 3 question is, why am I here? A lot of people, they were wondering, why was I actually born? Am I connected to everything? Am I an accident? I don't know. Why am I born? Number 3, what is it that I can do? What's my potential? Right? What am I capable of? And question number 5 was, what's my destiny? In other words, where am I heading? What does my life have in store for me? And one of those questions, as is clearly evident, is the question around purpose. Meaning, what is the meaning of this life? What is it? Why am I actually here? Why is it that when a man ejaculates, there are billions of sperm that are released, yet I am the one who made it? Why is that? Why is it that if I think about all the things that had to happen for my parents to meet, so that they had to stay together, and their first date had to go well, and their parents had to approve, and the things that had to go wrong, like so many things had to go correct before my parents even got to the point of having sex, and in my mum even having me. And it's like, okay, all of those things happening are just, it's insane. So why am I here? And I've come to realize that after speaking to literally now thousands of you guys, is that most of you don't know why it is that you're here. You have no idea. And I found that a lot of the problems in the world today originate from that question. A lot of the depression, a lot of the maliceness and the rage and the lack of morality in men today originates from the fact that most men don't have a purpose. I mean, not to get too deep into this, but when I coach leaders, one of the things that I usually have to run them through is a history of how men have been. Essentially, for most of history, the main two drives that have kept men disciplined are war and work. Okay? Essentially, war, there was always some kind of war that all throughout history that men have had to fight, whether it be World War One, whether it be Civil War, or whatever. And the other one was work. Essentially, women could not actually survive and raise children without a man back in the days. It just wasn't what, well, it was possible, but it would be so difficult, and the stigma of raising a child as a single mum was so horrible that, if you go back through history and you look at how many people gave up their children to adoption, it's ridiculous, right? Most of you don't realize that adoption and giving up your children and sorry, being a single parent today is like unheard of. If we were to go back to like 60 years ago, it's like insane. You just couldn't do that. Or you could, but the stigma attached to it would be ridiculous. And today, the thing is, we live in a world where men, those two things are no longer the main drives of men. Most women do not need a man today. Most women can make their own money. Most women can buy their own house. They've taken care of most economic and economic well-being of their life. And the other thing that sort of dominates women's lives is security. But if you live in the UK, I would say there or thereabouts, essentially we live in a pretty safe arena. The other thing, obviously, that I mentioned is war. We live in a world today where there isn't much war. Right? We haven't had a World War One. We haven't had many civil wars if you live in the Western world. So the truth of the matter is, and the reality is, a lot of men, we don't know what to do, because basically all throughout history we've either been hunters, protectors, or providers. But all of those have been taken care of by the woman for herself now. And so a lot of guys, we're undisciplined, we lack purpose, we lack a drive. We basically lack a sense of center to which we make decisions from. When I coach leaders, one of the things that I say to leaders, which is basically people who want to really do remarkable things in their life, one of the things that I say to them is, if you really want to live an exceptional life, you have got to lead a narrow life. Meaning, if you look at basically people who've achieved a lot in their life, most of them didn't do very many things. If you think of Usain Bolt, you know Usain Bolt for primarily running. That's kind of what you know him for. Of course, he's done other things, but the thing you know him for primarily is running. When you think of somebody like Nelson Mandela, you think of politics. Of course, Nelson Mandela was a lawyer and did loads of other things, but the thing that you know him for is politics. My question to you, and this will be a good test for you to ask yourself, is what are you known for? What do people primarily know you for? That will be, because, and actually, one of the big problems that I find so many of us guys are experiencing is a lot of guys were finding it difficult to find women. Do you know one of the ways and one of the things that women look for? Women look for men who are competent. But so many of us lack a sense of discipline in our lives as men that we're not competent at anything. We don't stick to anything, right? I was saying to somebody the other day, I was saying to them, what is your mastermind subject? And he was like, what? I said, what is your mastermind subject? You know that program, a mastermind. There's a program on television, I think it's a BBC or Channel 4, called Mastermind. And in Mastermind, essentially, you go on there and you choose one subject, and that one subject, you talk, is your speciality, you talk about it. And I said to him, what is your subject? What is your mastermind subject? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, think about this. You've basically left school, what, 10 years ago? And to this day, you are not primarily known for something. You are not primarily known for one thing, which means you're not competent at one area of life. And this again is what I've been really thinking about and trying to grapple with and trying to understand. And for me, by the way, in case you're wondering, the way I got around this is I honestly didn't know what my purpose was. So do you know what I did? I decided it. I decided it because I realized the significance of having a center to which you live your life. And so I decided it. Most of you know what my purpose is. My purpose on this planet is to help men become higher, fuller expressions of themselves. I looked back at all my life and I looked at what is it that seems to be the thread through my life. Number one, men always come to me and give me their problems. Or I would have loads of people come to me in my life and give me their problems and share stuff with me that you shouldn't share with people. Right? The other day I was working in a co-op and a woman came up to me, literally serving her, and she just said to me randomly, oh, my son died last year of cancer, and now my daughter has also just been diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and because she was buying Imodium, actually. That's what she was buying. She was buying Imodium. And I'm guessing the reason why she told me this was she was buying quite a lot of Imodium, and she goes, yeah, I'm going to the hospital because she's been told she has 4 weeks to live. Now, most people do not tell that kind of information to people. It's just so random and so crazy. Yet that happens to me all the time. So I looked at my life and I decided, right, clearly, look, the world seems to be driven by purpose. The world, everything on the planet seems to be connected in some way, which means I must be connected in some way to everything else. I can't guarantee that, but it seems to me that I must be. So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to decide what it is that I'm going to live for. I may change my mind in 2 years, 5 years, but from today, this is what I believe I've been put on the planet to do, which is to help men become higher, fuller expressions of themselves. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And if you look at my life and everything that I do, most of it is evolved, and is around helping men, advice, workshops. So my question to you, and I guess is the thing that I want to finish with, is what are you known for? What is your mastermind subject? What are you competent at? What makes you valuable to us as a human race? Because there is something, don't even try to even argue with me and honestly try to convince me that you're some accident. You're not. Every single guy on this planet is important. You're significant. You're special. There is something that our generation, need. That's why you've been born. You know, let me just give you a bit to take this before I finish off. Take this a little bit further. So in my work, I've had to really go several layers on virtually every subject that I study. And it's interesting for me to look at neural pathways, looking at the brain and how the brain forms. And when I look at neural pathways, it's interesting that when you are born, basically your genes and the way that you are born is structured in a certain way. And as you begin to live life and experience life, the environment, based on what you experience and you see and you hear, certain neural pathways will be created and formed based on what you've seen and heard and you've experienced. So meaning there are certain pathways that you have that won't be activated depending on whichever country you're in and who you meet. Meaning that there is something special about your particular pathways that is unique to the rest of our generation. That's how you can have somebody like Michael Jackson and Prince both essentially be singers, but yet do it completely different because they had different backgrounds, they came from different cultures, they experienced life differently, their parents had different belief systems. Do you understand what I'm saying? Something about you is special. Something about you is unique. And this generation needs it. We need it. If you don't figure out what it is that makes you special, what makes you competent, what makes you unique to the rest of us, you will become what I call a generational thief, which means that you're going to basically die and take everything special with you. Everything that you were supposed to give to us, you're going to take it with you to your death. Let me finish off with a story. You know I love a good story, so let me finish off with a story. There was a guy who was a general, and I'm going to paraphrase this story. There was a guy who was a general and absolutely wanted to be a general, absolutely loved anything to do with armies, loved soldiers. He spent all... He was like, I'm going to get into the army, I'm going to get into the army, I'm going to become a general, I'm going to be the greatest general that's ever lived. Spent most of his life learning and studying generals, but never actually became a general. He ended up getting to the point where he passed away and died, went to heaven, meets God. Says to God, God has a conversation with God, and God says, right, okay, off you go to heaven. And just as he's about to go to heaven, he comes around and says, God, can I ask you one question, by the way? Do you know who, when you created creation, could you tell me who was the greatest general that you created? And he said, do you really want to know the answer to that question? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I want to know who the greatest one is. I absolutely love everything to do with generals, and I have a passion for generals. Please tell me, who is the greatest general that's ever lived? He said, you are. You are the greatest general that was meant to be. But you never had the courage to actually pursue becoming a general. And I gave you free will. I gave human beings choice. I gave you the choice to be able to choose to either manifest your greatness or to not to. But you decided not to. So you could have been the greatest that ever lived, but you decided not to. I wonder if that's you. I wonder when you reach heaven, whether you're going to turn around to God and say, could have been the greatest ... fill in the blank, and it was you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has been useful for you. If it's been useful, you know what to do, guys. Jump on my YouTube channel, Cassimotive. Subscribe to it. If you think someone needed to hear this, share it with them. And also, you know what this whole series is about. Start your own journaling. Get yourself a journal, get yourself a pen, start writing down what you believe, what you stand for, what you like, how, start writing down what you want to tell your children when they get married, what advice you'd give them about relationships. Start writing down what you're going to say to your next door neighbor's kid when he reaches 16 and he wants to start working, and you're like, do you know what? I'm going to invest my time in this kid, and I'm going to give and pour as much of myself into this kid as possible so that this kid does even better than I ever did, because I don't have children myself. There we are. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will speak to you in next week's episode. Bye for now.